Enter the event panelist numeric panel.
February 27th to April 17th.
This meeting is being recorded.
I'd like to move approval of these minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, public comment. There are no public comments for this meeting. None were submitted for the record. I'd like to thank the customers and the public for staying home as much as possible and adjusting your travel in response to our service changes. And next, reports by our advisory committees. Now we have reports by our two advisory committees. Available online is a copy of the Accessibility Advisory Committee's April report. The ACC report always addresses the previous month's activities, so this one covers their March meeting. The Advisory Council report is produced the same month its meeting. Because the RAC did not meet this month, there is no report. So please turn to your diligent portal to see the ACC report. Next, we'll move on to the COVID-19 update. Now I'd like to ask Executive Vice President and Chief Safety Officer Teresa Masato to give us an update on Metro's issues related to the pandemic. Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As of April 23rd, we have 40 confirmed cases of COVID-19 amongst the Metro workforce. At least 3 of those employees are hospitalized at this time. The remaining employees are recovering at home, with 6 employees having returned to duty. Metro only reports confirmed cases involving our employees in our public portal. Contractors and members of the general public are not included in our public reporting of COVID-19 cases. For reporting purposes, a case is considered confirmed upon receipt of documentation from public health authorities or an employee's medical provider. Employees identified as having close contact are notified by our chief medical officer and sent home for quarantining and monitoring of their symptoms under the care of their personal health care provider. Identification and notification of other close contacts is handled by the health department in the appropriate jurisdiction. In accordance with stay-at-home executive orders, Metro has discouraged the use of our system except for essential travel. Essential travel includes first responders, hospital staff, critical government employees, grocery and pharmacy workers, and others who must work during the public health emergency. As a result, rail ridership is down over 95%. Bus ridership is down approximately 70 to 75%. Metro Access ridership remains at approximately 2,000 rides per day. We have recently seen an increase in the number of Metro Access requests from customers reporting they have COVID-19. In those instances, we've utilized a third-party agreement to transport these customers. Next slide, please. The safety of all employees, in this case, especially our frontline employees, along with our customers and the general public, are all priorities for our pandemic task force. As you know, Metro had a detailed, specific pandemic response plan in place well in advance of the current emergency. And today, Metro is working with other transit agencies as we all navigate our responses to the COVID-19 emergency, particularly in the area of our frontline worker protections. We've worked with public health authorities, including the CDC, to continuously evaluate the latest data and guidance. Among the actions we've taken thus far, with board support, implemented rear door boarding and waived fares on buses, isolated the first and last rail cars to protect our train operators, significantly reduced the need for station managers to leave kiosks, including the closure of public restroom access. We've changed schedules and modified policies and procedures to eliminate and limit employees' exposure and mitigate risk. We've reviewed work plans and altered work practices to accommodate social distancing and reduce risk of exposure. We've strategically deployed mobile hand washing stations and disinfection supplies to our maintenance and construction workforce. We've maintained an aggressive posture with regard to cleaning and disinfection of our equipment and facilities. We've reinforced the use of plexiglass barriers that protect our bus operators and have given bus operators the discretion to bypass stops if they believe that social distancing would be compromised by accepting more passengers. Most recently, we've urged riders to wear cloth face coverings while riding and deployed non-medical grade face masks from our stockpile to our staff. On March 13th, we activated phase 3 of our response, the highest level of the 4-phase pandemic response plan. That triggered a communication strategy to begin driving down ridership to protect public health and in anticipation of service reductions that we believed would follow. It was at that time that we began talking about limiting travel and staying home. On that Friday, we began asking riders to limit travel and stay at home if possible. Within 4 commuting days, the following Wednesday, ridership had dropped nearly 80%, and we put into effect the first service reduction. Through these efforts, we were able to protect the public and our frontline employees by maintaining social distancing and avoiding an imbalance where ridership could have exceeded the level of service available. We also took the unprecedented step of preemptively closing 2 stations, Smithsonian and Arlington Cemetery, with the express purpose of discouraging people from taking Metro to visit the cherry blossoms this year. We certainly look forward to welcoming everyone back on Metro, hopefully next year, to continue this annual tradition. As you know, on March 26th, we strategically closed 17 additional stations in an effort to conserve critical resources and protect the health and safety of Metro employees and the public. We will close additional stations as we prepare for the summer shutdown platform project. As of last week, we've asked our customers to wear cloth face coverings or homemade masks in accordance with recommendations by the CDC to help slow the spread of COVID-19. Next slide, please. On the communication side, our internal and external communications teams are using new, innovative tactics to ensure that Metro stays connected with our 12,000 employees, our media partners, and with our customers. Our information technology department was able to rapidly adapt to the needs of a remote workforce with the deployment of hundreds of laptops and tablets and a dramatic expansion in bandwidth available for VPN use. To give you a sense of how much is happening remotely, I pulled data from just one of the 3 video conferencing platforms that are widely used here at Metro. In the past 30 days, on that one system alone, there were 704 meetings conducted, totaling just over 175,000 minutes, accommodating nearly 5,000 participants. We know that staying connected with our workforce is so important, and that's why our general manager and the pandemic task force have now done 3 employee events on Facebook Live, answering questions that we received directly from employees. And we will continue to keep our employees informed, utilizing a regular cadence of bulletins, safety alerts, messages from our general manager, and updates to our intranet. For customers, in addition to the emergency public health communications that were prioritized across every channel within Metro's control, we've also worked to meet the needs of our media partners in the current environment of social distancing. That means our media relations team is conducting media briefings online, along with supporting remote interview requests for broadcast media outlets. Our website has been temporarily modified to put COVID-19 information at the top of every page, so it's always easy to find. This includes a wealth of public information, including releasable details about the employee cases we're monitoring, as well as ridership information updated daily for both bus and rail. Service information and the chronology of our response can also be found on these pages. Lastly, in the event that a customer or member of the public has a concern or question, they can reach a member of our customer service team, who are all working remotely, through our online chat portal at Wmata.com, or of course, via social media. Next slide, please. Furthermore, we've been involved with the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia in evaluating the timeline for relaxation of some of the social distancing guidelines and defining Metro's role in what a return to a new normal will look like for the region. Statistical models are being used to look at infection rates, predictive peaks, and the duration of infection. These models vary widely, with an up to 75-day variance for peak predictions in the next few weeks to sometime in July. These predictions are helping to form our posture for service restoration. The Pandemic Task Force is evaluating what a return to service will look like. Restoration of service is not necessarily considered a full recovery, and restoration of service will happen in a controlled fashion with a phased approach. There are indications that infection rates are not uniform in the region, and that certain areas of our demographics will be harder hit, which must be considered in the service restoration process. Some of Metro's workforce may reside in these areas, as well as customers who are dependent on transit. We will establish criteria for each level of return to service, balancing the potential for secondary and tertiary infection peaks, the potential for workforce availability constraints, and the potential for certain segments of the populace to remain indefinitely on telework. In conclusion, we are working hard to ensure a phased and metered approach to recovery, acknowledging the critical role we play in the region. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation with the COVID-19 update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Teresa, I just want to thank you for all your work, you and your team, both over the last month and a half. So before we turn to comments or questions, setting some ground rules, I think what we'll do is the last time, like we did during the budget session, I'll just sort of go around the table, so to speak, and give everyone an opportunity. If you do, or if you don't have a comment or question, just say so. So start with you, Ms. Givide. Any questions or comments for Ms. Emposado?
I have no questions at this time. I just wanted to echo my appreciation to the leadership team and all the staff for the work that they've done to date to ensure that the region is safe.
Mr. Goldman?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Horner?
No comments at this time.
Mr. McMillan?
Nothing.
Mr. Letourneau?
No, thanks.
Mr. Meridian?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Slater?
No comments, but I would like to take a minute and just thank everyone on the leadership team, as well as our frontline operators, those out there cleaning our stations and vehicles and driving our buses and trains. It's just critical frontline, essential work, and I just want to take a minute and thank them.
Okay. Thank you again, Teresa. Appreciate it. Now we'll move on to the chair's report. I want to start by saying thank you to our employees, all of them, who continue to come to work during the pandemic. We are grateful for the women and men who are dedicated to the mission of Wmata and who truly keep this region moving, even in the most challenging of circumstances. We look forward to more formally honoring all of you next month. Next, we are extremely grateful for the CARES Act funding that we will be receiving to support expenses related to COVID-19. Our congressional delegation helped lead the effort to ensure Wmata's immediate needs were addressed. We are also grateful for the bipartisan leadership in the House and Senate who work together to support transit agencies across the United States. Before us today is a resolution to affirm that staff's allocations of the CARES Act fund is consistent with Board Resolution 2000-08, which set forth the policy for allocating Section 5207 grant funding with local transit providers. Let's go ahead and get a motion on the table in a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So I'd like to move approval. Is there a second?
Second by Ms. Gideby.
Thank you, Ms. Givide. So again, let's open it up for discussion. Just like we did last time, we'll just sort of go around the table. Stephanie, we'll go ahead and start with you. If you have any comments or questions for the staff.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Golden?
Thank you. Yes, I can support this revised resolution. I want to thank the general manager, the chief financial officer, and the Metro staff in general for working with Montgomery County, Prince George's County, the Maryland jurisdictions, and with the Maryland Department of Transportation to come up with revised allocation numbers for the local bus operators that are more consistent from Maryland's point of view with the methodology used to provide CARE Act funds to other of the Maryland bus operators that are not in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area jurisdictions such as Howard County and Anne Arundel County. And so these revised jurisdictions will put Montgomery and Prince George's County on the same plane with their other colleagues in jurisdictions in Maryland. And at the same time, it boosts the CARES Act allocation for the district and the Virginia jurisdictions that are expressed in this resolution. So the resolution has my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Mr. Horner?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. McMillan?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Mr. Letourneau?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do just kind of want to have sort of on the record for our public discussion. The funding that we're providing here is effectively Wmata money, not CARES Act or FTA directly, correct?
Mr. Wiedefeld? Mr. Aniseki?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the questions? I understand it.
Yeah. So the funding that's being provided to the jurisdictions is not actually federal or FTA money. It is Wmata money that is being provided, correct?
Dennis, could you clarify that, please, for everyone?
Yeah, my volume is not working, so I can't hear the question, Mr. Letourneau.
Okay. Perhaps
Is Mr. Webster on the line?
Mr. Webster?
I don't believe he's on. If you repeat the question, I'm straining to hear what you're saying. I can try and respond to your question.
Can everybody else hear me, first of all?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, so my question was, the money that's being provided to jurisdictions is not actually federal money or FTA money, it's Wmata money, correct?
No, this is federal money.
Okay, that's not what the jurisdictions have been told. Is Ms. Sullivan available?
She's not on the call.
Matt, this is Paul Wiedefeld. I'm not there. Just so we're all clear, there is no such thing as Wmata money. You know, the money that we get is from the jurisdictions and from the federal government. That's the money that we have. So in effect, this federal dollars are being used to offset costs that we have. In the case that some of these dollars were going to go to the local governments, what they've chosen to do is allow us to use those dollars to, again, cover our expenses. In return, they will get a credit when they, in effect, get a bill for the local portions that they would be providing to the agency.
Yeah, and I just wanted that on the record because it is different, since if Wmata was effectively acting as a pass-through for the CARES Act money, then there would be requirements on the jurisdictions for how that money is used in compliance with FTA guidelines. If this is simply being provided as a rebate on the bill that Wmata provides, then more or less up to Wmata to sort of set the terms for which that rebate's being provided.
Yes, and that's why this historically, the last 30 plus years, I believe, has been the how this is operated, so that the local governments don't have to go through some of the federal requirements. We do that. We save. It's more efficient for one group to do it versus a number of properties throughout the entire region doing it. So that's consistent with how we've done this in the past as well.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Matt?
No.
Are you good? Okay, thanks. Secretary, Mr. Marushin?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Just want to echo Mr. Goldman in thanking the staff for this. I know this has been a heavy lift, and putting on my DDOT hat, just particularly thankful for the collaborative nature of the work here.
Okay. Secretary Slater?
No comment.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ellison, could we have a motion and a second? Can we conduct the roll, please?
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gideby?
Aye.
Vice Chair Goldman?
Aye.
Director Horner?
Aye.
Director Letourneau?
Aye.
Alternate Director Meridian?
Aye.
Director Slater?
Aye.
And Director McMillan?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And finally, I'd like to thank all those members of the public who participated in Metro's first ever virtual public hearing regarding parking garage modifications at the Grosvenor station. We are having our second virtual public meeting next week, April 27, for the permanent lot closure and proposed parking changes related to joint development at the New Carrollton station. I encourage everyone to visit wmata.com/plans and projects for more information on participating. This concludes my report. Now I'd like to turn the floor over to the General Manager for his report, Mr. Wiedefeld.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. First and foremost, I want to thank our frontline workers and everyone behind them as they continue to provide essential services for the region. And maintaining the safety of both our employees and our customers. So I want to thank them, and I want to thank the board for all the support they've given us as well during these trying times. As you know, today we are announcing the expansion.
Of course.
Today we're announcing the expanded summer shutdown program. As Metro experiences historically low ridership, we've worked with our contractors and regional partners to combine the schedule of two major capital projects in Virginia, the Platform Improvement Project and the Silver Line Extension. Our new summer construction plan combines the shutdown required for platform reconstruction work at 4 Orange Line stations with MWA's work to connect the new Silver Line Phase 2 segment with existing Metro Rail network. The next slide, please. Using the new plan, all 9 stations west of Boston will close beginning Saturday, May 23rd, Memorial Day weekend. Boston will serve as the end of the line station, as you may recall, for those in the region for a long time. That was the terminus at one point in the past, and it provides a convenient terminus point for us. Orange Line trains will run between Boston and New Carrollton. Silver Line trains will not operate in the system, obviously, because it's the same line. 3 local and express shuttle buses will be available for essential travel. Slide 3, I just want to reinforce that this is about working both smarter and safer. Closing these stations will allow us to limit the exposure of our frontline staff and contractors. Anyone that witnessed the platform work that we did last year, you witnessed literally hundreds of workers working very close in proximity to each other. This will allow us to give us some time to deal with the new working environment that we all have to work under. It'll mitigate delays of our capital program due to COVID-19, and it minimizes the inconvenience of the public later on when the demand does return. This change also allows us to protect employees in the Rail Operations Control Center, which is like the air traffic control center for our rail system. These highly trained employees are taking measures to mitigate risk, but the challenges they face have made the previously announced shutdown plan and its complicated service plan, single tracking, and other service options we had to perform unworkable. By limiting service complexities around the shutdown, we can allow the control center to focus on safely operating the railroad and reducing the potential for unexpected issues to arise. Our platform project contractor, Kiewit, has also implemented new protocols and procedures to ensure that construction crews continue their work as safely as possible. Because the rippling effects of COVID-19 outbreak remained largely unknown, we will announce the expected reopening date of the affected stations at a later date. We encourage customers to stay up to date on the project website, which is on this slide here. This page includes service information, shuttle maps, and the ability to sign up for email updates to stay informed throughout the summer. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wiedefeld. Again, we'll go around the table here. Ms. Gibity, start with you.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman.
No questions.
Mr. Horner.
No question.
Mr. McMillan.
No question.
Mr. Letourneau.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wiedefeld, I want to thank you for the briefing on the platform project. It's kind of tough news for line users, but I understand it, and I think you explain it. I ventured into the chartered and difficult territory of comments, user comments on news articles. I immediately saw a lot of confusion on one point, and I know the answer, but I want to ask you because I think the public is very confused. They seem to think that we're actually going to be rebuilding the platforms at the Silverline stations because the stories actually don't really make it clear that it's only the Orange Line. Now, I think we know that this project was only about the Orange Line. The Silverline trains just happened to come through it. But can you just A, clarify it for us now, and B, make sure that it's clear that only the Orange Line stations are having work done, but the Silver Line is shutting down because they share track?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. Only the platforms on the Orange Line as originally envisioned are being reconstructed, obviously, given conditions out there. But we will be doing work on the Silver Line not related to the platforms. And that is the integration of what we call phase 1 to phase 2, in effect, the extension of the Silver Line out to Dulles with the existing Silver Line. As you may recall, we had been working through that with the Airport Authority, and that would have potentially required up to 13 weekend closures to do that work. This way, we can do that work much more efficiently and much safer during the total shutdown. So that's the other plus of doing it this way.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for raising that issue. I heard from one person with that similar sort of question, concern. Mr. Meridian?
No questions, thank you.
Secretary Slater?
No question, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Wiedefeld. Now we have our next item is a report by the Finance and Capital Committee. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. McMillan, Chair of the Finance and Capital Committee, for his committee's report. Mr. McMillan.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Staff sought approval of a dedicated capital funding bond resolution and authorization for the issuance of Series 2020 dedicated revenue bonds to support the capital program. The bonds will be issued through a negotiated sale in accordance with the Wmata debt management policy, not to exceed $545 million in principal, 25-year maturity to support capital projects. Mr. Chairman, I move approval, and once the motion is on the floor, I will have an amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McMillan. We have a motion by Mr. McMillan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. All right, Mr. McMillan, now that the motion has been moved and seconded, would you like to make your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recognizing that the committee's April 2nd action anticipated staff coming back to the board today with a final package for issuance, I move the following amendment. The dedicated capital funding bond resolution approved by the Finance Committee on April 2nd, 2020 shall be deleted in its entirety and replaced by the following three separate resolutions, all of which have been previously provided to the board on or about April 17th, 2020. Number 1, dedicated capital funding bond resolution. Number 2, 2020A supplemental bond resolution. And 3, 2020 supplemental bond resolution, which supplements and amends Resolution 2003-53.
that it, Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McMillan. Are there any questions or any further discussion on Mr. McMillan's amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask Ms. Ellison to administer the vote on the amendment. Ms. Ellison?
Yes, just to clarify though, I think the second, was that from Mr. Letourneau?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Chair Smedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gideby.
Aye.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Aye.
Director Horner.
Aye.
Director Letourneau.
Aye.
Alternate Director Meridian.
Aye.
Director Slater.
Aye.
And Director McMillan.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Jennifer. The amendment passes. Jennifer, just to be clear, we don't have to vote on the main motion now. The amended motion suffices.
You've made a substitute, so now we'll continue with the three individual resolutions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Now that we have the three resolutions before the board, and I have been advised that we should vote on each of these resolutions independently. So the first motion is on the dedicated funding capital bond resolution. Can I get a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. McMillan.
Moved by Mr. McMillan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meridian. Any comments or questions? If there are none, Ms. Ellison, please administer the vote for the first resolution.
Chair Smedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gideby.
Aye.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Aye.
Director Horner.
Aye.
Director Letourneau.
Aye.
Alternate Director Meridian.
Aye.
Director Slater.
Aye.
Director McMillan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Jennifer. The first resolution passes. Now I'd like to ask for a motion on the second resolution, 2020A supplemental bond resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Meridian. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Ellison, please administer the vote on the second resolution.
Chair Smedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gideby.
Aye.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Aye.
Director Horner.
Aye.
Director Letourneau.
Aye.
Alternate Director Meridian.
Aye.
Director Slater.
Aye.
And Director McMillan.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. So the second resolution passes. Finally, I'd like to ask for a motion on the resolution. 2020 bond resolution with supplement and amends resolution 2003-53. Is there a motion?
So moved. Mr. McMillan.
Motion by Mr. McMillan. Is there a second?
Second. Meridian.
Seconded by Mr. Meridian. Any comments or questions on this proposed amendment? Resolution, sorry. All right, Ms. Ellison, please administer the vote.
Chair Smedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gideby.
Aye.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Aye.
Director Horner.
Aye.
Director Letourneau.
Aye.
Alternate Director Meridian.
Aye.
Director Slater.
Aye.
Director McMillan.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. All right, all three resolutions pass. Mr. McMillan, does that conclude the Finance and Capital Committee report, or do you have anything else to mention?
That concludes my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the consent items on today's agenda. We have one item on the board's consent item. I'd like to move approval of the following: the Potomac Yard easements. Staff requests board approval to acquire temporary and permanent easements for the construction and maintenance of the Potomac Yard Metro Rail Station, collectively valued at over $1 million. make a motion. Is there a second?
Second by Vice Chair Gideby.
Thank you, Ms. Gideby. Are there any comments or questions to the staff on this consent item? If not, Ms. Ellison, please call the roll.
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gideby?
Aye.
Vice Chair Goldman?
Aye.
Director Horner?
Aye.
Director Letourneau?
Aye.
Director Letourneau? Oh, thank you. Alternate Director Meridian?
Aye.
Director Slater?
Aye.
Director McMillan?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now we'll move on to the reports by the jurisdictions. I don't have anything particularly for VTC. Mr. Letourneau, anything you want to add here at this point?
No, I don't think there's anything unique. Obviously, all the Virginia jurisdictions are dealing with COVID, just like Wmata is and others are. So a lot of the service has been reduced, but we're all hopeful that some of this funding today and potentially some other things that Metro can do will help with the budget crunch that the local governments are feeling.
From the district, Ms. Gideby?
And at this time, thank you.
Thank you. WSTC, Mr. Goldman?
I just want to encourage our riders and users to stay safe, stay at home, and if you're a resident of Maryland, to listen and pay attention to the governor's messages on this subject from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. From the federal government, Mr. Horner?
And no report.
All right, thank you. With no further business to come before the board, we stand adjourned. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to request for an executive session. Now, in accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, Wmata contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions or the federal government. C, contractual or other matters involving confidential or proprietary concerns, or the investment of public funds where discussion in public would adversely affect the financial interest of Wmata. And F, safety and security matters when premature release would compromise public safety. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Please stay safe, and the board will reconvene in just a few moments. Thanks so much.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.
So are we getting off this?
Yeah, we're going to get off this and get on Blue Jeans.
Go on to the other, yeah.
Yeah.